It's no secret that our day-to-day life is being changed. Things as we know it are different. Our way of life, the way we are told to conduct ourselves. There are so many changes that have been imposed on us over the past 12 plus months. Again, we can see the beginning of this was roughly March or April of last year. So we're well over a year long change. Things are being made different, things are being made new. And people, as a society, as a culture, change can be challenging, change can be hard. I'm not saying change can't be good, but we as a people struggle with the idea of change at some point, especially when change is brought on abruptly and when this change is not initiated by us, but rather forced on us. That's when people struggle with change and with differences to life as they know it as usual. And so it's no wonder that we can go through the media, we can look through articles, and we can find different things that are related to these changes. That people are having reactions to what's going on around us. There's an article from NBC News talking about the numbers on a chart being very high of unruly and dangerous passengers on flights. It says the Federal Aviation Administration is warning air travelers about what it describes as a dramatic increase in unruly or dangerous behavior aboard passenger airplanes. In a typical year, the transportation agency sees 100 to 150 formal cases of bad passenger behavior. But since this start of this year, the agency said the number of reported cases has jumped to 1,300. So I mean that is a pretty big increase, 100 to 150 for the year. But just up to this point, 1,300, an even more remarkable number since the number of passengers remains below pre-pandemic levels. So we have less people traveling, yet more altercations. The behavior in question includes passengers refusing to wear masks, drinking excessively, and engaging in alleged physical or verbal assault, including what this agency describes as political intimidation and harassment of lawmakers. So, we kind of talked about stories similar to this in a roundabout way. I don't condone what they're doing. I don't think that we should act unruly and be aggressive. Like I had said with the Capitol riot, if you want to call it that, on January 6th. Was that wrong? Yes. I don't believe that was right. I don't believe that's what Trump initiated and what he wanted his people to do. Was it wrong? Yes. Should they be held accountable? Yes. Same with this. Same with these people who are disrupting the flow of actions or reactions to what's going on around us. If something is done that's against the law, if someone's breaking the law, if someone's harming someone else, etc., they should be held accountable. Now, unruliness, I guess depending on what they're doing that's unruly, that's a different story. I don't think that the punishments that they're wanting to place on people fit the crime, so to speak. They're talking about having fines up to like $35,000 or time in prison, or being banned for a lifetime from certain airlines. Those are ridiculous, especially if the problems are what we just read, refusing to wear masks or drinking excessively. those don't fit the punishment, doesn't fit the crime. If physical assault is initiated, then it's a little different story. But verbal assault, a little different. I don't agree with drinking, especially excessively. But that's what we as a society go to when we're pushed to limits that we can't control, and when certain people don't have a right standing and right relationship with God, and leaning on Him, they lean on something else, and in this case, alcohol. People are tired of wearing masks and filthy claws on their face that we've been doing for 12 plus months, when a year ago we were told 14 days to slow the spread. And 14 days has turned into 14 months or so. You have to understand why people would be driven to places like this. And people are driven to places like this, I believe, by the media, by information that comes our way through NBC News or through places like CNN. And there's an article from CNN, which, again, as I've stated before, there's many news sources that I don't trust. CNN being one of them. I believe they have a narrative and a leftist agenda, so far over to the left. And in my opinion, whenever we have journalists and journalism, it should be centered. It should be centered. It shouldn't be right. It shouldn't be left. It should be centered. They shouldn't be telling us their opinions. They should be telling us the facts, and they should be telling us information that's unbiased. And that doesn't happen. It doesn't seem to happen. But these sources push people to things like this. There's a new article about reaching herd immunity and how it can have dire consequences if we don't. So this Dr. Leanna Wen on CNN, this is what she kind of writes about. Millions of Americans are reaching COVID-19 vaccine doses every day. But one medical expert thinks the nation may not reach herd immunity this year if more people can't be persuaded to get a shot. I want you to catch these words in here that they put, right there being one of them, persuaded. And then with the winter, we have a big resurgence. Maybe we have variants coming in from other countries, and we can start this whole process all over again and have another huge pandemic come the winter. So first off, maybe we may have this resurgence of variants that we don't know about, we don't have at this time. So they're trying to instill fear in people. So we may have this, and this whole thing's going to start all over again. What turned from 14 days to 14 months, we may do that 14 months again. Again, fear. Okay. It's going to take us much longer to get back to life as normal, to stop having to wear masks for our protection, if people don't get vaccinated. And we don't have equitable distribution of vaccines. Infectious disease specialist Dr. Celine Gonder told CNN on Sunday. It's going to take much longer to get back to life as normal, to stop having to wear masks for our protection because people don't like it. So that's the incentive. If people don't get vaccinated. If you don't do what we tell you to, if you don't get vaccinated like they say strongly urge, persuade, whatever. If you don't do what we tell you to, then you're going to keep wearing masks. You're not going to get back to life as normal. Again, it's about this idea that they want control. Control is in a sense power. And I think it's very evident that over the past, year, we've given power to the leaders. We've shown them that we as society, we as people, we as businesses, we as U.S. citizens, that we will give you what you want. We'll do what you tell us to do. And that should be a little terrifying when we don't bat an eye at what people tell us to do. There's another CNN article, and I love it. The segment that this comes from is CNN Health, which, in my opinion, this article has some contradicting points where we're talking about health in regards to COVID-19. That's the information everywhere, COVID-19. But we neglect the health, referring to the mental health of this person. I'm sure there's people out there like him, but we're talking about helping one health while hurting another. So why, this is the title of the article, why some vaccinated people won't go maskless, and it's no doubt because of CNN, like we just read. So it says Soto plans to resume some social activities after he gets his second vaccine shot this month, joining the more than 100 million Americans who are fully vaccinated. But his life will be nothing like his carefree pre-pandemic days. You got to say just how sad that sounds. How sad, and I would even say pathetic. How pathetic that sounds. So before we go on, the Census Bureau by the Associated Press says that the population of the U.S. is 331 million, and some change. Okay, so just to put some perspective on it, so a third of Americans have been fully vaccinated. That article goes on, I will probably still wear my mask and avoid shaking hands for a long while. For Soto, many other pandemic-wary Americans, this is a tricky time. It's not tricky. The vaccinated are emerging from 14 months of social isolation into a world where key questions remain about where and when to wear a mask. Is that unmasked person near me vaccinated? If I don't wear a mask, am I setting a bad example or making others uneasy? This confusion is sparking political debates similar to the ones seen in early days of the pandemic. And while places are reopening and things feel safer, lingering anxieties remain. It's very disheartening and sad to hear this story, and to hear other stories from people around me who have literally been in isolation for months until this vaccine came out. They've been in isolation for months. They left to go to doctor's appointments, and that's it. They worked from home. They either picked up their groceries or had them delivered. I saw people shopping who were wearing gloves, who were wearing 2 masks or more. They had newspapers all over the basket to prevent the merchandise from touching their shopping carts. I've heard of people leaving their groceries outside for a day so that the virus can be killed. They don't bring it into their house. They Lysol the stuff they bring from the outside in so much. It's sad. And something that the Soto guy says, is the unmasked person near me vaccinated? Again, are you just going to live in fear the rest of your life, wondering if anybody around you is vaccinated or making sure they are? And then he says, if I don't wear a mask, am I setting a bad example or making others uneasy? I think we're setting a bad example by wearing masks. And that's my personal opinion based on what I believe God would have me do, and what I believe Jesus Christ would do if he was here in the flesh with us right now. I think it's setting a bad example by us as Christians, quote, living in fear and showing that to others. I'm in fear of this thing. Let's wear a mask. That's the way I see it. Is it making people uneasy? Is it offensive to them that I'm not wearing one? Should I do it out of love? I've heard that argument before, and I strongly disagree. I strongly believe that I am showing more love and compassion to someone by living a life that says I trust in God. I don't trust in Fauci. I don't trust in my government. I trust in God. I trust that God will take care of me and anyone else who trusts Him through this virus, through this pandemic, through this sickness. That's what I want us as believers to get back to. Showing love and compassion in a way that fits the Bible, not showing love and compassion in a way that fits the narrative of our society, which is what it's doing. So we're strongly working as a society to get people vaccinated. And fear is being instilled in people. So now we're going to change our age limits to 12 to 15 is the newest thing CNN writes about. For parents who have children ages 12 and older, how do you think they should approach the decision about whether their children should be vaccinated? Well, we're back to Dr. Leanna Wen. The first thing I'd suggest is to talk to your child. More than likely, he or she has a strong opinion. Many adolescents are really eager to resume pre-pandemic life and resume sleepovers and indoor birthday parties. According to the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, those fully vaccinated can see others who are fully vaccinated without masks or distancing. And a lot of 12-year-olds and teens are super excited to get together with their friends. So the first thing that this paragraph said, that I would talk to the child first. Yes, as a society, I know that we are treating children as if they're adults. We're telling, 3-year-olds that they can make a decision on if it's a boy, if he wants to become a girl, or if you have a little girl and she wants to become a boy. We're giving those kids that option and that decision to make because they're mature enough to do that. I know we as a society are thinking that way. And yes, there's a huge difference between a 3-year-old and a 12-year-old, but I still don't think that a 12-year-old can make the decision for themselves. And it's sad whenever you read this and you're thinking, well, let them decide. And let me sweeten the deal a little bit. If they do this, then guess what? Then you can go back to having a little bit of freedom. You can go back to having birthday parties inside and sleepovers and seeing your friends without masks. I mean, that's pretty awesome, right? You want that vaccine, don't you? There's a few questions that CNN asks and that Dr. Wen responds to. What other things can adolescents look forward to once they're fully vaccinated? Again, the incentive, the persuasion. What's in it for me? When more adolescents get vaccinated, we might see rules change at camp, youth sports, and schools. We might see them change. It's possible that mask requirements may be dropped if everyone in a camp or on a sports team is vaccinated, for example. Vaccination also makes everything safer for you as a family. A lot of families are trying to navigate how to be partially vaccinated. If parents are protected through vaccination but children are not, having kids also protected means that you are safer as a whole and can choose to engage in more activities together, including traveling and seeing other vaccinated families indoors without masks or distancing. I don't really know how this is working amongst families who are obeying the CDC laws, because me and my family and my extended family, we haven't obeyed them. We not that I'm some kind of rebel and want to do everything that defies what our orders are. But me and my family, we try very hard not to get mixed up in the flow of traffic. If we need to go somewhere, we do our best not to wear a mask, period. Depending on what we need to do, where we need to go, and it's forced upon me, then I'll make the decision. Do I wear the mask or do I leave? Depending on what I'm doing, what I need to do. I haven't stopped getting together with family. I haven't stopped going out to eat if I so desire to. I think it would be very sad having kids and families and grandma and grandpas and etc. being separated for 14 months with not seeing each other except maybe through Zoom, but being separated due to being told what we have to do. So again, parents are getting vaccinated, adults. Kids are going to be trying to get vaccinated, and I think they're even talking about reducing the age from 12 and older down to a lesser age, which is still crazy when you think about the facts that I've heard that kids are not being harmed by this like the older population. They're not as at high of risk. So we just read all that. But CDC still has restrictions. It's like there's so many contradicting things. You hear one media source say, well, if you do this, if you get vaccinated, then all these freedoms will be given back to you. And I say all loosely because there's not many. But then if you go and look at the CDC website and you look at different activities, and mind you, these are safer activities. These are safe ones, okay? Just want to throw that out there. When you look at these activities, it has a chart with the activity, and then it shows unvaccinated people and fully vaccinated people, and it talks about what's safest and what's less safe, and it's really really quite funny. But you know, as far as the unvaccinated people go for outdoor activities, mind you, the only two safe ones for unvaccinated is to walk, run, wheelchair roll, or bike outside with members of your own household, or attend a small outdoor gathering with fully vaccinated families and friends. Those are the only two safe ones without a mask that you can do unvaccinated. But even if we're looking at the vaccinated, there's still one on here that is red and least safe for unvaccinated and green for vaccinated with a mask on. Attend a crowded outdoor event like a live performance, parade, or sports event. You still need to be masked up outside. And then we look at the indoor ones, the indoor activities. And for every one of them that it lists on here, fully vaccinated and unvaccinated, you need to be wearing a mask. You need to be wearing a mask. Things like visiting a barber or hair salon, going to an uncrowded indoor shopping center or museum, ride public transport with limited occupancy. Those are safest for fully vaccinated with mask on, and they're less safe, and they're yellow with unvaccinated with a mask on. So again, any normal person should ask, so I get vaccinated, and what do I get in return? I feel like all these news sources, CNN, etc., are telling me you get this, this, and this, but then CDC says something else. And if you've followed any other sort of podcast or media source, you've probably heard that Dr. Fauci has contradicted himself numerous times. Speaking of Dr. Fauci, there's an article on Snopes, which again I believe is very liberal, and the what they fact check and what they call true and false, I don't really believe with. I don't agree with. I don't believe. There was a Tucker Carlson that he did that talked about what Fauci had said regarding mask wearing And they didn't like that. And he got called out for this based on the CDC info that we just read. Though his call out wasn't too far off, Carlson's. So this is what Fauci says, what Snopes quotes. You know that's quite possible. I think people have gotten used to the fact that wearing masks clearly, if you look at the data, diminishes respiratory diseases. We've had practically a non-existent flu season this year merely because people were doing the kinds of public health things that were directed predominantly against COVID-19. The Australians during their winter, same thing. They had almost no flu, largely due to the kinds of things, including mask wearing. So it is conceivable that as we go on a year or two or more from now, that during certain seasonal periods when you have respiratory-borne viruses like the flu, people might actually elect, I highly doubt that, to wear masks to diminish the likelihood that you'll spread these respiratory-borne diseases. So what Carlson had said is that Fauci had said, we are going to wear masks indefinitely, all the time. And Snopes came back and said, no, that's not what he said on I think it was Chuck Todd's Meet the Press. That's not what he said. But we just got through reading what Fauci had said, what he was quoted. And basically what he's saying is, hey, during seasons of the year when things are going to be rampant, like the flu, then yes, we can see obviously how much that's been reduced by wearing masks and taking care of ourselves. Then yes, then we need to continue doing that. So speaking of the flu, did you know that NBC News says that flu cases went from 200,000 to less than 2,000 last year? Again, based on what I've heard, based on things I've seen, I've watched, so many times when people went in to get tested for COVID-19 or get tested for anything, it was ruled as COVID-19. That either no matter what you had, it was ruled as COVID-19, or the flu, if it was legitimate, was registering as COVID-19. Assuming no funny business was going on. It was all registering as COVID-19. So no, I honestly don't believe that flu cases went from 200,000 to 2,000 last year. That's ridiculous. That's crazy. I think that our data and numbers are skewed. But they're afraid that this is going to cause a whole nother mess in the future. This is what they write. For more than a year after the pandemic started, COVID-19 is still ravaging parts of the world. But now scientists are warning that another virus could be a serious threat to the coming months. Influenza. This season, the flu virtually disappeared, with less than 2,000 lab-confirmed cases in the U.S. to date, according to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. In a typical flu season, the U.S. could see more than 200,000 lab-confirmed cases by this time of year, a tiny fraction of the true number of cases estimated to range from 9 million to 45 million annually. Holy cow, that's a lot. But that's a lot, and mind you, we've never freaked out about this in the past. But COVID-19. But according to scientists like Dr. Andy Pogosky, a professor of microbiology at the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School for Public Health, a year without much flu could lead to a year with a whole lot of flu. We've gone over a year without a significant portion of the population getting infected with flu and getting immunity because of that, Pogosky said. That should mean that the susceptible people in the population to flu are going to be increasing. So it's funny. It's funny to read what we just read. What this doctor said, we've gone a year without a significant portion of the population getting infected with the flu and getting immunity because of that. Isn't that odd how our bodies work and how God created us to do things like that? So he's saying it's a bad thing that we haven't been infected to build up immunity. It's a bad thing to not be infected and build immunity. But clearly that's what we've been doing for the past 14 months, is trying to deplete our immunity in our immune system by wearing masks and not breathing anything but our own filth. That's what we've been doing. This doctor is saying, hey, our bodies are made to do this. Our bodies are made to take in a disease, an infection, whatever, a virus, and to work within itself as God created us to fight off this infection, this virus. Crazy, right? Crazy. When someone gets the flu, they usually develop some immunity to the virus. No duh. We've seen this, at least in my 30 years of living, we've seen this for a while now. That's why young children and babies are often the most susceptible to getting infected, because their immune system hasn't seen the virus yet. But since there was such little influenza circulating this year, the number of people without any prior immunity could double. So we listen to the doctors to tell us, hey, mask up so you don't get sick, and let's, while we're at it, let's break down our system, our bodies, to do what they need to do naturally. Which I assume they know that because they're doctors, right? And we have this doctor saying, hey, this is not a good thing that we have. He's not saying this is not a good thing, but he's saying that because of what we've done, we've affected that. I don't know if I can trust him and his sources or not. It was from NBC News. But it's just interesting to see people's take, and they may be saying one thing that they're thinking that fits the agenda, the narrative, but it's like at the same time I hear what you're saying, I see what you're saying, but it can be taken this way as well. So from as long as I can remember, we were told that young people weren't susceptible to the virus. Not that we couldn't get it, not that it wouldn't affect us, but we were less likely to be sick and to die from it. Sure, the older you are, the older you get, your body is more tired, is more broken down, is more worn out. That makes sense. That makes plenty of sense. So CNN did this article on 10 reasons why young people really need to get vaccinated. I'm not going to read them all to you. They're just kind of funny. And they're funny because most of the reasons are, hey, don't be self-centered. Don't worry about yourself. Worry about other people. That's what their reasons are. That's what their reasons are. And as I talked about earlier, I don't agree with their philosophy. One of them was, if young people don't get vaccinated, it could leave everyone vulnerable. Almost all of these, yes, they were pointing out that you're a jerk if you don't do this. If you don't do what we tell you to do, you're a jerk and you're self-centered. And how can we depend on you? How are we going to get back to normal life as we know it if you don't help us out? If you don't do what you need to do to help us move on? You know what? I said I wasn't going to read them, but let's read them real quick. So COVID-19 doesn't have to kill you to wreck your life. I think it's wrecked a lot of lives. Not COVID-19, just the balloon of COVID-19. Strong, healthy immune systems can backfire. Like I said, if young people don't get vaccinated, it could leave everyone vulnerable. Getting vaccinated will help the economy. Well, it would have helped the economy if we didn't shut it down to begin with. Vaccines can save people lots of money regarding health bills and whatnot. Vaccines are free. Come on now, it's free. And I get it. Getting vaccinated can up your dating game. Oh my goodness. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that people didn't stop dating because they were told not to see other people. I'm pretty sure that kept going. Young people or their friends may be at higher risk than they think. A new strain is spreading rampantly. Again, fear. All of America needs young adults' help to stay safe. It's critical to protect children. So again, stop thinking about yourself. Come on, man. And especially young white people, evangelicals. Those are some of the three classifications that Biden has been talking about, that Jen Psaki has been talking about, as far as the people who need to do this, who are refusing to, or who just have no desire to. White evangelical men. And then they use the argument that, man, I thought that evangelicals, I thought that Christians, they loved other people and took care of them, looked out for their best interest. It's really pathetic. Actually, it's really pathetic. But don't worry. Biden has a plan. NBC News tells us that Biden is going to shift in how vaccines are allocated, setting a new 70% inoculation goal by July 4th. You may have heard this. The move comes as Biden is also aiming to have 160 million Americans vaccinated with both doses by Independence Day, a senior administration official said. Currently, 56% of adults have had at least one shot, and 105 million are fully vaccinated, the official said. To get to that remaining group, Biden said the federal government will be making the vaccine easier to access. I thought it was already pretty easy. Encouraging companies to offer incentives for people to get the shot, and ratcheting up the messaging campaign to those with safety concerns. Again, incentives. Why do we need incentives to get a vaccine? That is crazy. That's crazy. Persuasion. It's ridiculous. Now we're going to have to bring the vaccine to people who are less eager, Biden said. So we also know that there are millions of Americans who just need a little bit of encouragement to get this shot. So let's up marketing. Let's spend money on pointless things to get those shots in people's arms who don't want them. Again, I've never understood since the beginning of this that if you wanted to live in fear about this, then you do that. I don't think you should, but you do that. You do that. Don't affect everyone else. If you want to wear a mask, great. If I don't want to, fantastic. If you want to get a vaccine, great. If I don't want to, great. If I want to take the risk and if I want to put my life in God's hands, then I will do that. If you want to wear a mask and get a vaccine and put your life in the government's hands, fantastic. You do that. This, it sounds very cliche when I hear it, and now that I'm going to say it, but this is America. It's freedom. Why don't we make the decisions that we feel best for us and for our family, and let everyone else do the same? This has been Biden's push. This has been Biden's voice ever since we started hearing him and Trump debate at the end of last year. Trump is the one that got the vaccines out. He wasn't against it. He was against the idea that we're going to force people to do what they want to do regarding masks and vaccines. But we have Biden, and we see his focus, we see his push, we see his energy is put into this. And I think there's so many other things, so many way more important things that we could be focusing on, that he could be focusing on, than this. So where do we go from here? Where does that leave us? We need to get back to, number one, a place where people are free to make their own decisions, where people are free to choose what they believe is best for them and their family. And yes, there's an asterisk on that, because I believe that we can't just have a free country to do whatever we want whenever we want. I believe that we have the Bible as the foundational backdrop for us, and we base our decisions of the country as a society on that. When there's something that's not going to hurt anybody else, when there's something that's not going to affect anybody else, when it's something that's not wrong and hurtful to me personally, then I think the government should have a limited access to what they tell us to do and not to do. So much of what Biden says and what he's done, I disagree with. And it's scary and terrifying to see the trend and the direction that we as a society and a culture and a country are going. I fear for my children when they grow up and as they get older. You know, my son's 5 and my daughter's 3. What's it going to look like later on in life? We need to, as conservatives, as Bible-believing people, need to stand up for what we believe in, and we need to voice our concerns and our opinions. Period. And Jesus was the perfect example of this in the Gospels. He was not afraid to do and say what needed to be done and said, which is ultimately why he was killed and crucified for us. And praise the Lord, he was buried and he rose again, offering us salvation and the gift of eternal life. And he doesn't expect us to take this life and go through this world laying down and being slapped around. No, he expects us to fight mentally and maybe even physically. He expects us to go with him, putting on the armor of God to do the things that need to be done for him and for his kingdom. Period. We need to get back to that as a society, that the society that was the way it was founded all those years ago. So as always, if you like what you hear, please like and subscribe this. If you have any comments or questions, or you disagree with something I've said, then let me know. I would love to back up something I've said, walk back something I've said, or I'd love to double down on something I've said. That's why I'm doing this. I want to voice my concerns and my opinions based on what the media is telling us. And so I want you guys to do the same thing. So until we talk again,